In this video, I'm going to talk about low light clearing, and just to kind of give you guys a respect for the complexity of low light tactics and low light engagements. It throws some complexity in there because you want to use whatever advantage you have and to your advantage. So, anyways, as you can see here, we're just going to cover the basics. I'm going to talk about an inward opening door and the principles behind clearing an inward opening door, and obviously the hinges are on the right side. Some houses may be like that, others may not, but we're going to talk about a center fed room. And it's a lot easier to do corner fed in my opinion, but center fed rooms have their own methods. And as far as clearing with a flashlight on your weapon or not on your weapon, we're going to cover no penetration entry. Now there's no penetration, there is shallow penetration, and there's deep penetration. So anyways, or deep entry, not penetration. So it's going to be a no entry clearance that I'm going to talk about here, which is probably most of what you're going to be dealing with. However, if you're trying to occupy the room, then we're going to talk about deep entry, but I'm not covering that here, and I don't really need to cover that. If you want to know how to do that, get your own training. So anyways, with that said, all we're really going to do here is slice good angles, and you want to make sure that they overlap. When you're approaching, you want to approach shallow and with a good distance from the door. We're not talking about how to open doors. That's a discussion for somebody else to cover. But anyways, you're going to be able, there's going to be a good amount of dead space, and typically you're going to want to clear opposite the hinge, so you're using the door as kind of a concealment. And then, of course, you're trying to slice off different areas, and you want to keep a good pace as far as movement, but you're turning off the light after you do an evaluation. And this is where I wouldn't actually recommend temporary on, because if you have to engage, trying to hold temporary on and firing can actually cause interruptions in your light, which can be more disturbing to your ability to actually make effective hits. So I recommend constant on, do your evaluation, and then quickly turn it off. This is not hard to do, so I don't think there's really much of an excuse. So anyways, you want to clear in sections, and make sure when you move to the next section, you're overlapping your viewpoint. So if there's a piece of furniture right here, and you basically see a little bit of it, and you're clearing from this side, you want to be able to still see a good amount on the right hand side, because we're clearing to the right. You still want to see some right hand side, just to make sure you're not over slicing, as it's called. With that said, that's basically the same as taking a very wide step to the side for most door frames, and you want to stay, as we see here, the smiley, you're wanting to stay as far away from the door as possible, and that's pretty much reason for incoming fire and possible reactions, because once you deploy your light, you use your light, it's very likely that you're going to agitate that person that's inside the room. They may want to act now, and therefore you may face that, and you want to give yourself timing. Also, incoming fire is very likely through the walls and through basically door frames. However, firing through walls takes away velocity and can deviate the bullet from its intended trajectory. So that can work to your advantage if you're giving yourself spacing. That way it gives it time, and the angle it's a lot less likely, because with distance your profile is shortened. Even if it's just a little bit, it can work to your advantage as far as not causing necessarily life-threatening wounds, but it kind of gets into weeds of ballistics, terminal ballistics, and stuff like that, shooting through barriers. So anyways, you go along this whole route doing sections of light exposure. You're not moving while using the light. However, you try to minimize the time with your light on, and you want to move really fast. And you may want to alternate how fast you're moving and try to listen the whole time, but the idea is to be quiet and surreptitious as much as possible, because if there's somebody next door, if you're just loud the whole time and you just give up on that, then they are automatically going to be able to anticipate your movements. But if you engage somebody right here, and you have somebody next door, and then you immediately go quiet, again, they're not even going to know that if you're still there, if they're friend one or not. So it can be very confusing for them, and that can kind of play into your hand a bit. So anyways, From here, if you clear this area, you still have dead space on both sides, and that's typically how people who invade the home and kind of try to create a hard point, they go to a point of domination where you actually have to get into the room and they can ambush you. So the idea here is they're probably against the wall and ready to engage you or grab you or something like that, so they're ready to engage. So you basically go here and do sort of a step center. You don't need your light necessarily, but you will have about a 45-degree angle on the inside of the room, as you can see here, depending on the width of the door frame and stuff like that. But your path is kind of clear from this area. Then you turn off the light and you immediately go inside as fast as you can. This is kind of the step center principle, but then you immediately advance. And notice here, I'm giving a good distance from the door, at least in this this illustration here, but basically you're following your old path and then moving. And typically, if this is a hallway setting, then you're not really going to have all that much distance. It'll be limited by the width of the hallway, obviously. So anyways, you go inside, and for this principle, you're still trying to use the door as a method of concealment, and then you immediately clear this side, and this could be sweeping from this dead space all the way to about a 30-degree angle, what you weren't able to cover with this from this point right here. And then immediately you turn off the light and immediately turn around and try to clear this area. And you're going to have to kind of get around the door, or maybe push it against the wall with your light activated. I would recommend a constant on while you were doing that and try to get the drop on the person. Maybe you can go in a little bit more, but this is not a shallow entry where you're temporarily occupying the room. This is basically you have no intention to occupy the room after you clear it. So anyways, people can hide behind the door, so make sure that the door is flat against the wall as much as possible. So with that said, one thing you can do is kind of follow the angle of the door and kind of look through the crack and spacing on the hinges. But anyways, that pretty much covers low light clearing, and you can use this for like alleyways and stuff like that when you're going from dark alleyway to dark alleyway, but it's usually recommended that you avoid alleyways and stuff like that. But if an alleyway is coming up and you want to make sure that there's no weirdos looking to ambush you around the corner, then this principle will still apply. Give space to that opening, and keep your visibility kind of pine with your eyes. And if you have street lights and stuff, you'll probably be able to use that to your advantage and not really need your white light. But to keep yourself and others safe, this tactic can be employed out in public. Obviously, you're not drawing your weapon and stuff like that unless it's like an active shooter, but basically that's going to need an added component of communication and following law enforcement orders or dispatch orders to basically not interfere with certain things and not try to be the first responder all the time. But that, depends on the situation. So with that said, this is usable all the way across the board for safety. So with that said, I appreciate you guys watching. Go ahead and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think, and you guys have a good one.